people want all of these fundamental human qualities in their leadership. And yet I believe that, leadership is trying to slap a dollar or slap a pizza or a ping pong table or figuratively putting all of these band-aids on things versus really looking at how am I showing up? And so for me, I think that's really what forms that lens to how do we make people feel like they're taken care of? How are we kind to people? My first TEDx talk did it on the power of kindness because to me, that was the most important message to get out there. And this was about 15 years ago. And so now I have professional speaking friends who talk on the power of kindness. And I'm like, this is phenomenal. I didn't think we'd ever get there.
What's funny, Rachel, is your messaging is all about being a relatable leader. And one of the things I've found to be most successful in leadership is the ability to put life first.
Yes.
And when we're having a conversation that most people would say, "What is this about? Like, why are they getting to, like, what are we getting at with the shows and the Netflix and the family?" And the reality is, getting to know each other is building that foundation and that structure to the rest of the relationship, which I know you talk about in your book. And so often I get in business meetings and they immediately go into business and I'm like, okay, well, I need to understand the human behind who I'm working with. So if you don't mind, Rachel, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about your personal life, anything you're willing to share, and then a little bit about your business and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how the feedback we get when we do these meetings. We do a lot of mergers and acquisitions and a lot of business transactions. And so people will say, "You were the only person to ask me about my personal life. Out of every company we talk to, nobody asked that." And it's so crazy to me to think about that.
Yeah, if I don't care about the person, I don't care about the business. It gets you bought into the entire transaction, the entire arrangement. So it all started in the first grade. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna go back that far. Uh,
Did you go to Catholic school or did you go to regular school?
So, actually, it's kind of a fun story. I went to a, public school, and then I was horribly bullied until the 6th grade, and in the 6th grade, it just hit kind of this breaking point where people were being so cruel to me that, I ended up leaving the school and switching to a local Catholic school nearby and finished out 7th and 8th grade there, and it just transformed everything, and it's an interesting thing when you look at it in retrospect. It's all about your surroundings. It's all about that impact of the environment, and so I stayed in Catholic school through high school at that point because my parents were like, "It's not broken now, so let's not move any pieces." So yeah, graduated from Red Bank Catholic in New Jersey, if anybody anybody from New Jersey is listening, and then went to Syracuse for my undergrad, and then eventually went to Seton Hall for my law degree, and then abandoned all education and decided I was going to do television for about 10 years. I was on TV as an expert. And it's funny you talked about parenting in the beginning. Long story long is I started a startup company. So I was a practicing attorney, had a startup company in the dating space before apps even existed. Ended up raising about $2 million in a private placement super quickly and launched the company. Crazy response. Oprah called. We were on the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, like this just enormous immediate impact, but failed miserably because seconds later all of the apps came out. It was as if they were just waiting and waiting to launch and destroy us, made us completely obsolete. It wasn't personal, I doubt. But that's what led me to
The
TV.
idea was good. The idea was
Yeah.
great.
Solid idea. It was this offline online dating concept, and, but I was doing all the media around the company, and then people were asking, "Well, you talk good on camera, like, come back on." And I said, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna do my hair and makeup? Amazing, I'm back." And so within 1 year, I was a parenting expert, a legal expert. I was commenting on the Jodi Arias case on CNN. I'm like, "I had no business being here right now."
That
But I started doing just, TV around relationships, and that's kind of what led to speaking and then writing and researching. But it
sometimes when you learn how you never want to be treated and you're treated in a way that is unkind to a level that it changes your trajectory in life, you
Yeah.
learn true skills that help you build relationships because you know what people need. And the people that are bullying you in elementary school are the very ones that weren't getting loved in the way they needed by their parents. And they were the ones that were, not being shown the things that you needed to be shown. And, you become that expert and that great speaker and relatable leader because of your foundation and what you drove to understand, and it's so it's I find that super interesting and still connected.
Yeah, I am so grateful. It's funny, even throughout my life, people are like, "Oh, you're so humble. You're so this, you're so that," in these positive ways, and I'm like, "It's all from trauma." It's all these are all trauma responses of again, like you just said, I was treated in a way that I would never treat my worst enemy. And so for me, I think that's really what forms that lens to how do we make people feel like they're taken care of? How are we kind to people? My first TEDx talk, which honestly I didn't even know what it was. Someone just asked me, like, "Hey, you want to give a TEDx?" And I'm like, sure. I like talking. And I did it on the power of kindness because to me, that was the most important message to get out there. And this was about 15 years ago. And so now I have professional speaking friends who talk on the power of kindness, and I'm like, "This is phenomenal. I didn't think we'd ever get there."
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's really interesting because in business, it's almost like the bigger the company you go to, the less people rely on the very things that make relationships function, the higher levels of communication, the relatable leadership in ways where you're actually trying to understand and meet people where they are versus versus immediately going into what you need from someone.
Yeah.
I think it's super interesting to watch relationship building become kind of a skill
Yeah.
that people have to teach themselves and or relearn. And we talk a lot about relationships over transactions, and so much of business is just a transaction. It's like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast with Rachel today, and we're going to have this conversation, and then I'm going to launch it. She's going to launch it. We're going to hope that it helps each other, and then it's done. And that is not how we do anything. It's never how we've done anything. It's always about building a relationship, getting to know the human, and then it becoming the beginning of an ability to, hey, you know what? I remember that person that I had on the podcast. Maybe that would be a good presentation we could have keynote at this next big event we're doing. Or you build something for the future and you're building upon it versus this short-term transactional leadership type of mentality.
Yeah, that's what creates the dynasty. That's what creates really the platform that's going to help, the exponential amount of people. It is that transactional approach, and that's where people I think get it wrong is that they look at it and they say, "Well, it worked for this or it worked for that or I got what I needed." And you may have gotten what you needed, but it was a fraction of what could have been created if you'd only done the harder work, which is to really dive in and to really invest the energy. And not to say that every situation requires an investment of energy. I'm always very cautious, and I love that energy is a part of your entire motto and acronym is because not every situation. I mean, I'm sure you've been in situations where you're like, this is not a situation that I want to invest my energy in.
Right.
So you give the minimal amount. You get back probably whatever the minimal return is, and then you move on. But then you have people like you, where immediately I was like, "Oh, this is someone that I think I could be connected to for infinity and find ways to be complementary and really help one another grow." And it's again, to use the word again, it's exponential.
Yeah.
And people are missing out when they're kind of looking at things with that very narrow view of what this should be.
Yeah, I think we go through the motions a lot of times. Like, think about the relationships. There are people that you and your husband will hang out with,
Yeah.
and they give you energy, and there's other people that you'll sometimes hang out with, and they take away your energy. And so I find myself being such an energy reader that if you see my low energy, it means that I'm not interested. That I know that I'm going to invest in this room, and this room will not invest in me.
Yeah.
And or you'll start to tell a story, and you'll get super excited, and nobody cares
Yeah.
and they're telling a story and you're asking all these curious questions like, "Oh my god, how old were you? When did that happen? What?" And I, all it takes is hanging out with one of your best friends that you've known. My One of my great friends, Josh, and I, every time we connect, it's like, "Hey dude, how's your kids? Like, what's going on?" And he's asking me every single thing about my life. I have to actually interrupt him to make sure that I can get some questions in about his life. And I'm like, "Hey, tell me about that date you went on the other day. Like, was it good? Did it go great? Like, what was the breakdown here?" And but I feel like it's that equal investment and building of the relationship. And with energy, I feel like we have to know where we're willing to put that energy, and we get the most out of people when it's reciprocated, when they know that we care.
Yeah. And you make such a great point, and that's actually probably in the last 10 years, I started not eliminating, it's more of like a quiet ghosting of friends who don't reciprocate. And it's not, and I wanna make this clear, I don't wanna be the center of attention. I don't need to be the center of attention. But if we've been talking for 2 hours and you don't know anything about my life, that's freaking weird. And think about, I mean, I'm sure you can come up with on top of your head people that you've met recently and you're like, "Oh, this could be an interesting person." And then 30 minutes later, everything has been directed to them and they haven't asked you anything and they're not curious about you and they don't care about you. To me, that just shows you don't care about anyone but yourself. And it's fascinating to me how many people do that very subconsciously. And so if we could put a plea out, be aware of the conversations you're having, be aware of the people that you're talking to, and make sure that you are reciprocating. Because I guarantee someone, if you are the person that's never asking a question, you are limiting all of your relationships. You're limiting your network, you're limiting your potential because people are walking away thinking, I don't ever need to talk to that girl again, or I don't ever need to talk to that guy again because that didn't feel good. And yet, exactly like you just said, you hang out with your best friend, or maybe it's someone that you just met that's like, "Scott, tell me about your kids." Like, "Oh my gosh, the fact that they're gonna play in this incredible game tomorrow against Ethiopia, that's could you even imagine that being a part of your life, and how does it feel right now?" Feels a lot better.
Yeah. I also
Which
I
actually is something really cool. I do you have you talked about that yet? Because
No, no, I haven't. It is look, it is super cool, and, my youngest son is playing in a big game at Audi Field tomorrow, and they're he texted me yesterday, he goes, "Dad, the seats are selling out, make sure you get your tickets because I hadn't gotten them yet because they never sell out, and so
well,
I'm
you're
like, "Oh my
right.
gosh." Yeah, apparently it was a big deal, and so it is a super big deal, but you bring up another great point, and that is, who's celebrating your wins?
Yes.
So, this goes to family, it goes to friends, it goes to people that if people love you and want to invest in you, are they there when you have your wins? And one of my stupid little comments I'll make is that several years ago I got invited to a playoff game. I'm a Cowboys fan, a Dallas Cowboys fan, and my one of my good friends. Yeah. Are you an Eagles fan?
No, well, so I'm
Okay.
a Giants fan by station and my parents, but a Pittsburgh Steelers fan by marriage.
I don't like either of those teams, but I mean, my dad grew up hating we have something called a PPW, perfect, this is a perfect Sunday night. It's called as a PPW Sunday night, it means Pittsburgh, Philly, and Washington all lost, and the Dallas Cowboys won. That's my dad has growing up, my dad calls that a PPW. So, the point that I was gonna make about people celebrating your wins is I was the Cowboys in the playoffs, they're playing the Niners. My good buddy is a Niners fan. I call him, I'm like, "Dude, I just got invited. My buddy's got 50-yard line. We're going on the field after the game. Like, we got the whole VIP experience, and I gotta make a decision, like, today if I should go." He's like, "Oh my god, you gotta go." He's not like, "How do you get me tickets?" It's his favorite team too. He's like, "Oh my god, you gotta go." He's texting me throughout the game, and the Cowboys lost. It was a playoff game, which they've gotten in a tendency of doing lately. But, just celebrating your wins, even when it's not something that's maybe celebratory for that person, is
Yes.
a great representation of true friendship, and that also happens in your family. I mean, if the kids do that, if the kids aren't celebrating things that we're celebrating for them, I'll pull them aside and I'll be like, "Hey, dude, I just want you to realize your mom just did something super cool, and you're not understanding the amplified benefit of how cool this is, or, hey, I just sacrificed all these things for us to do this. I want you to understand what we do to get you here. Just a little reminder so you can not be the main character in the story every day."
Yeah.
And we all have to do that. I mean, it's not like I mean, we're both talkers. So if we had to learn a skill, it was we probably get I know I do. I get energy from being in a room with cool people that I enjoy. And so I can get excited, and sometimes that means it's like a wind up. You're wound up and you're excited. You have to learn to pause and wait and let other people in. But that was a learned skill that I'm still not always great at, but it's just who we are. And, but it's that energy. It really is all tied to energy.
And it's being aware that there's people outside of you. There's people that are just as important than you. There are situations where you have to highlight somebody beyond yourself, and those are all skill sets that require us to have some serious self-awareness. And I think it's difficult, and especially, we have teenagers. I've 2 teenagers at home now, and they are very self-centered naturally, and it's pulling them outside of that. And I think that as a skill set, it's probably the one that's probably the most beneficial in terms of life in general, but especially once you get to, whether it's a leadership role or just in a professional capacity, is how can I think about people beyond myself? And having that self-reflection, I think, makes the biggest difference in terms of what you then are able to achieve.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of my favorite people to listen to is a priest named Father Mike Schmitz, and he's out of Minnesota, and he's big on the Hallow app, which Mark Wahlberg and all these people use, and I've been using it since it came out. It's a phenomenal app for meditation, for prayer. But Father Mike does like a weekly homily, a weekly sermon, and um, and he did a great one on the main character syndrome and how we often you find yourself, and we all do this, where we're the main character in the story. And any time that you find yourself super overwhelmed, or you're bumbling something, maybe you messed up something large, like, or you're just completely in your own stuff, it's so easy to recognize it when you step back and look, but it's very difficult when you're in the moment.
Yeah.
And so I tell myself that a lot. You are not the main character here. Like boarding a plane. I hate the boarding process in a plane. I think I tell myself in my head, and I'm still awful at it. If my kids were here right now, they would laugh at me. I have employees that would laugh at me about it, but I'm the guy that wants to be the first one on the plane. I really love to get that stress out of the way and chill,
Yeah.
because the chaos and the disorganization makes me wanna fix it, and because I can't, and they're, like, boarding random groups of, I'm like, "How is this possible? How is this even the order?" And so, but I tell myself in my brain, I'm literally, "Okay, main character, it's not your story, you're not the main character, everyone here has to join." So, but I have to walk myself down sometimes. It's so I'm not just saying this for people listening. I'm saying this, I do it too, and it's challenging, but the more we remind ourselves of that, and when we're younger, we're always the main character in the story. It's very difficult because we're finding ourselves. That's what you're describing with teenagers.
Yeah, I expect nothing less, and we joke about it all the time, and even, we have a 25-year-old that's still he's starting to shift. It's incredible because I had a conversation with him the other day, and so he's on his own. I've never had a kid off the payroll before, so it's kind of it might be my biggest accomplishment. Thank you. But so yeah,
Bravo.
he's he's got a job and he's got a life. He just moved into a house with a couple of his buddies, and he's got a pool, and so he's telling me all this amazing things, and then he goes, "Mom, how's your book launch going? I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for you." And I honestly, it actually gets me teary right now because I'm like, wow, he's now evolved out of that kind of, that isolated thought of this is all about me to I care about this person. I want to hear more about what's going on with them. And the unfortunate thing is that some people don't evolve into that. And so it was lovely to see, but I also think if people are listening thinking, well, my relationships aren't as fulfilling, or maybe there is a situation that I'd like to develop more and it's not going in the right direction, are you in main character energy, or are you putting yourself outside of yourself, and pay attention. I remember when I was getting really intentional about conversations and making sure, and especially in media, so I did TV for 10 years, and they're trying to teach you how to talk in sound bites and all of these things, and you see people all the time, and I'm sure you've had them on the podcast, where they'll talk for 10 minutes straight before allowing a word in edgewise. I have become very cognizant, it's very intentional to say, "I've talked enough. Let's pass the baton back," because nobody wants to listen to me talk. I mean, even in a keynote, I make sure to break it up with interactions because, like, nobody needs to hear me yap for 60 minutes straight without a breath in between where no one else is contributing back towards it. So it can be very intentional, and it's just I think it's one of the most important things we could focus on.
Yeah, 2 quick points on that. Number 1 is, it's always funny to me to think about being a 25-year-old kid and to see that shift, but what's interesting is they come across as self-centered and main character, but what's funny is they're really trapped between trying to please us as their parents and trying to figure out what they want for themselves, and that spiral and challenge that they're running into is them getting caught up in themselves, and they're leaning on what they understand the most, which is, "I know that you're putting this pressure on me," when you may not be putting any pressure on them at all. But it's that feeling, excuse me, around 25-ish, 27 years old, I remember earning, more than I ever dreamed I would earn, and it wasn't a huge amount, but it was big enough, and I came to Sunday night dinner. We do Sunday night dinner every single Sunday with our family, and I was gonna tell everyone about it because it was like I was in finance, it was an award, like, I got the Century Award and all this stuff, and I remember going my dad made a comment that, like, made me immediately I was so aware that he made this comment, and the comment was something about earning, and it was related to, like, people not understanding how everybody's how the rest of the world's functioning, and I remember going, "Oh, this is about this is not about the family. It's not a family share. This is an individual thing. This is you can be proud of yourself, but it's not something that anybody else is supposed to be proud of you about. If you're sharing it with them, meaning that you're helping because there's something you're doing financially to support or there's a benefit for people, then that's worth sharing. But
Mm.
just telling someone that you did X is not something and that was a I think it was very being the oldest grandson and the oldest son in my family, like being the oldest in so many ways, I think you had to realize that some of the things you thought people cared about weren't important.
Yeah.
And so it's a transformation for your son, which is super cool. And that's why you get teary-eyed about it because he's becoming a man, but he's also understanding that other people that have helped him get there are so important to him.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because as you were talking about, sharing your salary and, of course, being proud of it, and I think we live in this world where it's, "Look at me, look at me, look at me," and it's very individualistic, and, there's a lot of people and I've talked to younger speakers who are coming up in the business and talking about sharing wins, and I'm all about sharing wins. I think, you had a win of your salary, but I always look at what we're putting out in the universe, even if it's to your family or to your following, is this for ego or impact? Is it ego? Because if it's ego, keep it to yourself. Tell your best friend. Let it out somewhere that doesn't need to be putting yourself on a pedestal for some reason. It's actually why I find self-promotion so difficult for me. I rather most of what I post about, what I post if I do videos on LinkedIn or on Instagram, it's intended for impact. And I'm sure you felt this too with your books. It's like when you're launching a book, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this feels so much like ego," because but I have to reframe it because I said, "Oh, this is an impactful message. This needs to be out there."
Right.
And I need to make sure that everything that I'm putting out there is framed from the impact standpoint versus my ego. Because if you are run by your ego, you might as well just call it a day because you'll never have a great relationship. You'll be successful to an extent, but there will be a ceiling, and it's not glass.
No, and you're also wrong. Like, most of the time, whatever you're chasing is wrong. So, if I look back at that moment, it was so small that it wasn't even worth sharing. Like, in my brain today, it wasn't about it the ego was trying to make me show that I was doing something, and it was not impact driven. So, it's actually interestingly enough, my life model, my impact box I started out by writing work wealth in that box. That's what I used to write when I was creating this model, it was all about self-awareness to me. So love, impact, faith, and energy were 4 parts of life, and it was my self-awareness of saying, "Where am I winning? Where am I failing? What am I not doing that I wanna be doing more of? What do I need to do less of? What are the things that Scott needs to put down on paper to get better and to grow and to get to the place that I wanna go?" Whether it's a goal or a dream or whatever. But in the beginning days, like in my 20s, when I first started using this tool, I called it the work wealth box. And it was so long and it was always empty and I never could get everything out on it. And when I shifted it to impact, everything changed. Now it was what am I doing this and who am I doing it for? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it for the impact of others? It was something bigger than myself, so much more valuable. So I love that.
Yeah, and then what you do and why I love that you have those very clear boxes is that it keeps you it's like that North Star. It gives you that compass to focus your entire life on because what I see, whether, wherever you are in your professional development or wherever you are in your career, it's easy to go on autopilot. It's easy to be unintentional with our actions, with our words, with our experiences, everything. We're just kind of we're chasing whatever's in front of us. We're saying yes to whatever door is opening but when you have that lens to look at it through, you start to really navigate more directly, and it makes everything else seem easy to say no to. And that's where I think it becomes very interesting for people, especially high achievers and people who are looking to reach that summit we always think that it's a summit of yes, that, just keep saying yes, keep doing, keep plugging, keep hustling, which honestly is my probably least favorite word. It's like this whole idea of hustle culture. If you are hustling, it's likely because you are unintentional in some of your choices. And so you're not compensating that for the other energy that you have to conserve to really make the right choices. And listen, there are times in my life where I'm still hustling, as you mentioned before, when I'm writing. Oh my gosh, like,
When you're pumping a book, you have to
oh my
hustle
gosh.
too. This is a hustle that's not fun, but it is true.
But I'm intentional about it, and I'm aware of it, and I'm like, "This will not last forever. This is a moment in time," but you're going to summit faster if you learn to say no based on the lens that you've created. This doesn't fit love. This doesn't fit impact. This doesn't fit my faith. This doesn't fit my energy.
It's crucial. It's funny that you mentioned the book because obviously, you have a new book, The Relatable Leader, that is out, and, it's I found it to be very uncomfortable when you're pressing, like, even, like, sending out I remember when I launched this podcast, they were like, "Hey, you need to get 100 people, as quick as you can to like it and to give it 5 stars and to do these things," and I was sending out the intro to people when we launched it, and I was so uncomfortable. People that I would do anything for,
Yep.
that I would if you called me and said, "Scott, will you give me 5 stars? Will you pop this up? Will you send this out to people? Will you share it?" Like, I would do it 1,000 times over. But I would struggle to ask someone else to do the same thing for me. And I don't know if it's because, um we have humility and there is some humbleness to the success that we've had, or if I'm so uncomfortable with the ego that shaped so much of my youth that I wanna just kinda I was killing the ego and now having to bring something back that feels egocentric, it's challenging. I had one uncle ask me, he's super close to me, and he goes, "So, why do you do this podcast and all this video and stuff? Do you wanna be famous?" And I was like, I don't care in any way about viral videos or fame or anything. You know why I do it? Because I get texts from people that are watching it and they tell me that that video really helped frame something for them, or this conversation made them look at something that changed them as a leader. I've heard you talk about people coming up to you, and I listened to one of the podcasts where you went and presented to some of the judges that you cribbed for in the early days, and it changed how they operated in the courtroom. That's impact, and that's what I think we have to remember when we're launching the book, is the message has to go out, and if someone's not receptive to that message, then maybe it's the wrong energy and the wrong person and the wrong team, and they're not rooting for you the way that you want them to root for you in the first place.
Yeah. It's still horribly uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable, I hate
I
it.
was texting with a friend this morning. She's like, "Oh, I just left you a review and so excited for you." And I was like, "Thank you. And also, why am I still so embarrassed to be like, please help me?" And I do believe it's that thankful for the humility of it, but there is you have to get past that a little bit. And if you continue to look at it through the lens of impact, the reason why I'm asking for this is because it's going to change the algorithm. The reason why I'm asking for this is because then it'll reach other people. And it's getting past that, which is still a work in progress, and I don't think I'll ever get over it. It's always gonna feel uncomfortable and weird.
So the relatable leader, let's talk a little bit about the book specifically. Tell me what drove you to actually put this one out. I know that you did a previous one, and this is kind of a secondary version of the leader version. So tell me the mindset behind it.
Yeah, they're definitely meant to work together. My first book, Relatable, How to Connect with Anyone Anywhere, Even if It Scares You, came out in 21, and it was really intended for helping people create those one-to-one relationships, professional, personal. And then through that and through my work, I just kept seeing the need for a leadership companion to it for building teams and starting to study and research disengagement and the cause of disengagement. And truly it's from disconnection. And so I am a total data nerd. I've always been a nerd. I've always loved science and research. And I ended up going back to get a master's in psychology just so I could research myself. I found myself really wanting to understand how they did it, how to study it. And so I did a proprietary study for this because I wanted to see what are teams really looking for? Where we're missing the mark? And so that's where the book came to life. I did this study thinking, oh, this will be part of a keynote. This would be great. And then all the data came back, and I remember being in this office and shutting the door and being like, "I will talk to you, family, in about 7 business days. I have some stuff to unpack." Because what came back was just it was so foundational, in terms of what people really need from their leadership, but I just think we again, it's what are we focusing on? And there's a lot of there's kind of I think there's so many different facets of leadership. There is ego-driven leadership where they're not focusing on anyone but themselves and their power and their status. There's accidental leadership, which happens all the time where they're like, "How did I get here?" No, no one told me what to do, so I'm just gonna do things based on what I think could be right. And then there's people who are really, doing the work, and so my goal was to really help especially actually all 3 of them, but especially those other 2 to think, "How do I look at this differently? How do I look at my teams differently?"
Yeah, that's really good, and I think, when I was looking through, the research for your newest book and kind of following up on what you've done out in the public and evaluating it, it was so funny to see how relatability was so low on how people feel their leaders are connected to them. So, if there's a disconnection in leadership, and a lot of times leaders have no clue why. Like, they're like, "I do everything for these people, and I'm trying," and they are in their brains, but there's one or 2 steps that they're forgetting: the communication, the connection. Talk to us about some of the things that leaders can do. If you're listening to this and you wanna get a couple of quick excerpts that are important, what are some things that a leader can do that if they wanna have a bigger impact and connection in with their team?
Yeah, well, it's bringing back the humanity, and that you could think that you're making all the right decisions or putting the right practices and processes in place, but where is the humanity? Because that's what people were really searching for. That's what they're looking for. When the research came back, respect was the top trait that they were looking for. They want to be respected from their leader, and I found that to be kind of shocking to me because, in my opinion, I thought respect was a given. The fact that if you don't respect your team, why are you a leader? Or why are they on your team if they're not someone that you think is deserving of your respect? And I was researching it and I came across this definition of respect that I share often and it always gives me goosebumps is that respect is the manifestation of believing another person has value. And I think honestly, if you think of nothing else, if you remember nothing else, imagine if every person in this universe treated every other person as if they had value. Imagine if all of your team were trained to do that for one another. Imagine if every person who led did that for every one of their team members. I guarantee this disengagement would be gone because that's all people are looking for. And maybe it does to kind of circle back. Maybe it does go back to the first grade. Maybe it does go back to, we're teaching what we've learned is like that was something I was craving then and I left because I didn't get it. And people are leaving because they're not getting it either. And so I go on to share a lot of the other traits that people are truly looking for from their leadership, and it's a lot of communication challenges. Trust is another one. We don't trust our leadership. I think the last data point that I saw was that 21% of teams trust their leadership. 21%. That means 79% of people are going into work saying, "I don't trust you." That's cuckoo. It's absolutely
A lot of that is also generational. I mean, I think it's been really interesting to me as a leader and CEO of a company to watch, the way I grew up is if Gen X, I was the edge of Gen X in the beginning of millennials. I'm in that trap generation of like
79.
70. Yeah, I'm 78. So like it's like 77 to 82. You don't have a group. Like you're not a
Or
millennial, you're not a Gen Xer, but you do understand. And when you came out to work, there was still baby boomers consumed every role,
yeah.
and you were a rookie for a decade in anything you did, where millennials came out and, like, 5 years in, they're getting, like, management jobs that they haven't even earned, a lot of people. I'm like, it's crazy because there's not enough people to do the generations are major gaps, but my biggest, realization as a leader was the disparity in trust. So when I came out, if you were my leader and I said and you looked at me and said, "Scott, if you do these things, we'll take care of you." I would have been like, "Okay." And until you didn't take care of me, I would be like, "Hey," and if you didn't take care of me, I'd be like, "Hey, Rachel, we said we were gonna do this, but, I don't know that it's happening. No, no, we've got this plan. It'd be no problem." Today, when someone comes out, it's like, it has nothing to do with you never not doing what you say. It has to do with the fact that there has to be like this ladder, and it has to be laid out, and this step to this step, and that step to this step. And the more it's defined, the more people can track, the more trust they find, and And so it's a unique disparity, but we shifted a lot in our company to make sure that, okay, just because it's not what we're comfortable with, but if everyone else is comfortable with this, then let's start building towards that. So we built out the ladder and we built out the steps, and there's still trust involved in leadership,
Yeah.
but it's still uniquely challenging in that space, and navigating the generational challenges can be very unique.
Yes. Yeah, and we did actually a breakdown in the research. I had equal parts of each generation: Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, and then baby boomers. I left out Gen Alpha because I don't think my daughter's, like, ice cream scooping job really needs
Yeah.
included. She doesn't trust anybody, but, yeah, and it is really interesting to see the dynamic between them, but also what I found fascinating is that a lot of the overarching principles, what people are looking for, doesn't change. The method of delivery changes, the communication styles change, all of those elements change, but from a umbrella standpoint, if a bird's eye view is looking down at what people are looking for, it's all the same things. And people want all of these fundamental human qualities in their leadership. And yet I believe that, leadership is trying to slap a dollar or slap a pizza or a ping pong table, or, those are very figurative because we're all out of the office half the time anyway at this point. But figuratively, putting all of these band-aids on things versus really looking at how am I showing up? And trust is one of those things. And I share this as often as I can is, I believe there's 4 C's from a research-backed perspective, how you build trust. It's communication, means honest and transparent communication. If you can't do what you said you were gonna do for me, Scott, just let me know. It's okay. Like, we'll figure it out. So communicate that. It's our competence, and this is where you just made an awesome point of, like, these millennials that end up in these positions, they're not showing up as oftentimes competent because they don't have the experience. So you have to gain that competence or be willing to say, even if I don't know what the answer is, I'm going to figure it out. And we're going to figure it out together. And then am I consistent? Are my actions and words matching? And the last one is the one that people have the hardest time with because it takes time is, do you care? Because you cannot trust someone who doesn't care about you. If you don't seem like you care about me at all, I will never trust you. And yet I have leaders all the time that say, Rachel, that's awesome. Great. Awesome. Let me put this into practice in the 3 seconds that I have in between my meetings. But then listen, you can either do that and take the time or figure it out, or you're going to spend a whole lot more time training the new person.
Yeah, and if you did take the 3 seconds to walk by, which I do all the time in my office, my assistant will be like, "Hey, you have, like, 7 minutes." And I'm like, "Alright, well, I'm gonna walk around the office real quick." And I literally just check in, and those check-ins, I learned so much.
Yep.
Quick check-ins. "Oh, your son just finished his Coast Guard training. That's awesome. Where's he gonna be?" Or, one of the other things that we found really valuable is Mondays and Fridays, we started every Monday at 9 a.m. with a Zoom with, 20, 30 people, and it's like water cooler. It's a Monday morning huddle. So, it's just life. 30 minutes of life. What's going on? And how's your life? And people share everything about their weekend. "Oh, here's what I did." Now, not everybody, the introverted people don't always share, but
Yep.
I might call on Dana in my meeting and say, "Dana, did you watch Shark Week? I know Shark Week's one of your favorites." She's like, I did. I didn't like all the shows, but that's all she's not gonna come in with, like, long stories. But then we have someone else who's telling us about their daughters every single week. That builds the trust not only in leadership, but in each other, and because they like each other, they wanna work with each other. And that builds a whole another level. We do wins and challenges, and they come on 30 minutes, and it's personal and professional wins. They can talk about anything they want, but they're sharing. It's a great way for me to say, "Rachel, great job. It was awesome this week. I got to work with you. We did it. We crushed it on this project," whatever it was. And it's amazing how just creating a forum for other people to community for them to share has built the trust within the organization, and it's unique, and I think sometimes they don't wanna do it, or people are like, "Ah, it's such a pain," but I remind them, I'm like, "You like the people you work with, that's a big win."
And those moments, as you just said, even 7 minutes, my gosh, the what you accomplish in 7 minutes is priceless. And actually, it's not quite priceless, there's a direct ROI on it of keeping people happy, keeping them engaged, keeping productivity up just based on these things that you probably naturally would do even if there was no end goal, if there was no bottom line that would be affected by it. So, kudos to you, and I wish every other leader would take those moments of, "I have 5 minutes." Yes, you could check your email or you could figure out what's next, or you could check in.
Yeah, it's well, it's relationship over transaction, and that'll help if they have to know, like you said earlier, if they know you care, it goes a long way.
Yep.
So, what's been the most fun thing that you've done since you've launched the second book? Anything that stood out as like a big win, or it's been it was way more fun the first time, or what stands out to you?
No, actually, this happened to coincide. The launch of the book was earlier this week, and I'm part of the National Speaker Association, so I attend Influence is the main conference every year, and it happened to coincide with the conference. And people thought I did it on purpose. I said, no, the publisher picked the date, and then I looked at the calendar and realized I was going to be at Influence, and so I was able to do. I hosted a happy hour party with about 50 of my colleagues and friends, and it was so cool. Like, I mean, we barely talked about the book. We did have I love relatable leader tattoos, for people, so we had a tattoo station, a whole lot of champagne, and it was just this amazing moment, and one of my friends pulled me aside and said, "You need to look around this room, like, it's almost like a wedding. You need to stop right now and stop mingling and talking and just look around this room and realize the amazing people that are in here all to celebrate this launch," and it really did just kind of give this amazing perspective. No matter what this book does, I'm so grateful for the community that I've created, and this book has allowed me to just be able to observe that, and that was absolutely it's something I'll never forget.
Isn't it funny how when we take a minute to let go of the result, how great it is to just enjoy the ride and how hard
Yes.
that is for us to do when you're driving towards a result? I mean,
Yeah.
it's very difficult, but when you stop and you breathe and you look around, you really do feel something that you won't forget.
Yeah. I was like, "I won. I won. I don't it could sell one more copy, and I still won."
Well, if one person is impacted by it, then it was worth all the work that went through it. I mean, that's how I look at anything. I mean, you're impacting more and more people with every single book that you're doing. How do people find you? How do they book you to speak? How do they get the book? Tell people on the show how they can connect with Rachel.
I would love that. I'm Rachel DeAlto everywhere. Website, LinkedIn, Instagram, and, the book's available everywhere books are sold. I love saying that, or Amazon, or Amazon.
That's awesome. Well, it's been fun getting to know you. It's been fun learning your story, and I'm rooting for the book. I have my copy. I actually bought a second copy, so we'll give one away to somebody, and we will put all this in the show notes, and we'll look forward to people following you and watching your journey as you grow.
Thank you. This has been awesome, truly.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.